that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 368th edition of Energy Week with me, George Harvey, and the other guy who is the amazing Tom Fennell in the flesh. I knew you were going to say that. Okay, we've had a bizarre week. I mean, totally bizarre. And so what I'm going to want to do here is kind of rush through things a little bit until we hit the really meaty stuff, which is in a couple of days. The first day that we're working with is April 16th, and today being the 23rd. And the material that we have here is all coming from my blog, geoharvey.com. And you can get it by going there or by using links or a file download that is available from the material that DCTV puts up online and at its site.
Well, some of these are well worth following up on. I mean, I read all of these, and some of them, as I say, are well worth reading. And I'll try to mention some of the better ones. And you go to George's blog and click on it, and see if you can read directly from the link.
Well, there's two things that I'm going to want to do in the course of this. One of them is to explain the futures market.
Yes, I got a little bit of a blurb on that.
Did you?
Yeah, I did, because it's confusing.
It's confusing. The other thing that I want to explain is what I call Harvey's third law, which has an effect on things like the oil industry collapsing.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it is, and then I'll explain it further when we get to the point that the story is relevant.
Sounds like a plan.
Harvey's third law, Harvey's first and second laws were like Murphy's laws. They were something I made up for a lecture. But having done that, I came to a point where I realized there was a law that is a real law. It can be proven mathematically, and it is the likelihood of something extremely unlikely happening is extremely high.
You better say that again.
The likelihood of something extremely unlikely happening is extremely high.
I like that one.
Well, you know, it's like if you sell 1 billion lottery tickets, each one has a 1 in a billion chance of winning, but somebody's going to win. And the chance of that somebody's extremely unlikely event happening is 100%.
Yeah, very high.
Yeah,
way higher than that.
Yeah, looking at things in retrospect, you say, what were the chances? Well, if it wasn't that, it was going to be something else. So with that having been said, let's go up to our first little, this is not a big item, it's from Energy Leader.
Let's start with this one. We got a little picture there of solar panels.
Pretty picture of solar panels out in a meadow.
And what it says is, Colorado Springs Utility announces the start of its largest solar project. This is significant.
It is. It's a very short article, though. Duke Energy Renewables Colorado Springs Utilities announced the start of operation for the Palmer Solar Generating Project. The 60 megawatt project has more than 220,000 solar panels on about 700 acres of land southeast of Colorado Springs.
60 megawatts isn't all that big.
60 megawatts is a big solar plant, and this is huge when you consider that it's the situation for Colorado Springs.
Well, it's 220,000 solar panels, and it takes up 700 acres of land. So I guess it's significant.
Yeah, and it'll give them a significant part of their energy needs.
And a quick takeaway from the article, the utility has increased its renewable resources from 19 to 114 megawatts in the past 6 months.
That's
so they're doing something.
Yeah, they are doing something, and this refers to the solar farm actually running, not to the thing being started.
So it's not just an idea. This is real.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm hearing an echo here. If people online or are watching this hear an echo, I should explain. With the coronavirus pandemic, Tom and I are both working from home. So we are not going into the studio because we don't want to get infected. We are practicing social distancing of about a block and a half.
That's close enough.
Yeah.
Close enough for me.
Okay, we've got an article here from The Guardian.
Yeah, we do. We got a picture of a meltwater canyon, which is interesting.
Yes.
That's a glacier in Greenland, presumably.
Yes.
And that's a river.
Yes, running down a canyon.
Melting ice.
Yeah, running down a canyon that the river carved in the ice.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah, it is.
When you think about it, when you want to think about it, it's even more scary.
Yeah. This is
Well,
really
scientists confirmed the dramatic melting of the Greenland ice sheet.
This is from The Guardian. Greenland's ice sheet melted dramatically in the summer of 2019. Researchers confirmed this. A study revealed the loss largely down to a persistent zone of high pressure. If such pressure zones become regular features, future melting could be twice as high as currently predicted.
Well, this melting phenomenon happens every year. This is nothing new.
Yeah.
But what is new is 95% of this ice sheet melted in 2019.
Yeah.
Compared to an average of 65% between 1981 and 2010.
Yeah.
Only 2012 had a higher meltwater runoff in recent years.
Yeah.
That's almost all of it.
Well, what this refers to is not the percent of volume of the ice, it's the percent of the surface area of the ice that is in melt. And
that would change things a little bit.
Yeah. And I remember one point several years ago, it might have been in 2012, when and in fact, I think we talked about this at the time, they found that 100% of Greenland's ice at one particular time was actually in the process, the surface was melting. But, Greenland's big and the ice is thick.
Well, the ice on Greenland is on land, so if it melts, that water will raise sea levels.
That's absolutely right.
It's not like an ice cube in a drink.
No, it's not. It's not.
So that's kind of something to be aware of.
It is indeed. Okay.
Let's move along here.
Yep. Our next item is from the Daily Pennsylvanian, and there's a picture which is titled University of Pennsylvania Campus. And I got to tell you, that skyline that's silhouetted there, that's not the university. That's Philadelphia, I'm pretty sure. University
for the Daily Pennsylvanian, and it says University of Pennsylvania Campus. Yeah. But it may not be.
I think that is the University of Pennsylvania campus, except
it's downtown Philadelphia.
Yeah. You can't see the campus because it's kind of in shadow in the foreground.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you got for title?
Penn. That's Penn at the university.
Yeah,
Penn signs power purchase agreement to supply campus with solar energy by 2023. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. The University of Pennsylvania signed a power purchase agreement for the construction of 2 new solar energy facilities with a combined capacity of 220 megawatts in the central part of the state to supply the campus with renewable energy.
It's interesting. It's the central part of the state. It's pretty far away.
You mean that the solar array is...
The solar array is somewhere in the middle of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And Philadelphia is on the East Coast.
But they invented this really nifty thing, Tom. It's called a transmission line.
Well, I don't think this is going via a transmission line. I think they're putting in the electrons here and taking other electrons out there, and it's all done by a computer.
It's all done by computer, but the only connection is the transmission lines.
They're there already.
Lines that are there already, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I should have mentioned, if you want to read these articles in depth, you can go to geoharvey.com and click on the date that we give you on the calendar. Those three were from the 16th of April. We are now up Friday, the 17th of April, and we have an item from BBC.
Well, just before we hit this one, to give you some idea of what's going on here. The facilities they're talking about for the University of Pennsylvania are 220 megawatts.
Yes.
Okay? We have in Fairground Road, our own, it's only 5 megawatts, and it looks huge to me.
It was indeed when it was built, and it still is.
It's still pretty large.
220, I think the largest array in Vermont is still 20 megawatts. And so that means this is 11 times as big as anything that's in Vermont.
If it got any bigger, it'd be in New Hampshire, wouldn't it?
I suppose. You mean the array we have here in Brattleboro? Yeah, it probably would be. Okay, we have a picture of Lake Mead.
We sure do. Now, Lake Mead is a reservoir.
Right.
And it supplies water to Las Vegas.
Yes.
So it's a very important reservoir.
It also, this is behind the Hoover Dam, isn't it?
Exactly.
And so it supplies electricity as well.
It produces electricity. It preserves water. Yeah. Without Lake Mead, there would be no Las Vegas.
Yeah, and we've talked about Lake Mead many times before with the water level being low. This is the first time I've seen this particular picture. But you can see, it's way down from what it should be.
It's way down. Well, that's what it does.
Yeah.
That's what it's been doing for years, but this is probably as bad as it's ever been.
Yeah.
And the title of the article reflects that. It says the U.S. mega-drought is already underway.
A drought equal to the worst to have hit the western U.S. in recorded history is already underway, according to scientists. Researchers say the mega-drought is a naturally occurring event that started in the year 2000 and is still ongoing. Climate change is having a major impact, making the drought more severe. We covered this drought a bunch of times, and I guess a couple of years ago, we kind of came to the conclusion that it was over, and these guys are saying it's not.
I don't think they're saying it's far from not.
Yeah.
Well, what they're talking about, a mega-drought, it refers to a multi-decade event that contains periods of very high severity.
Yes.
And there's only been 4 mega-droughts in the western U.S. over the period of time from 800 to 2018.
Yes.
That's a long period of time.
Yeah.
And they figured this out from using tree ring records.
Right.
When they compared the worst drought events in the past to soil moisture records from 2000 to 2018, they found the current period is already worse than 3 of the 4 recorded mega droughts.
Yes.
So this is nothing to sneeze at, folks.
No, this is nothing to sneeze at. Not at all. You want to move on, Tom?
Yeah, I think we got another one coming up. We got a picture of the GM corporate office.
Yeah, this picture actually came with the article, and I'm kind of sorry I used it because it's so fuzzy. But, it's from Clean Technica.
It is that. And it says work begins on GM/LG Chem, Gigapower Plant Battery Factory. And LG is a Korean firm, I guess it is, isn't it? And they make a lot of electronics. I have an LG phone.
Yes. Actually, so do I. Tesla isn't alone working toward an electric automobile future. Just one day after getting approval from the Army Corps of Engineers, work began to clear the land for what GM calls its Gigapower Factory, a battery manufacturing facility on 158 acres in Mecca Township, Ohio. Gigapower? Do you suppose that's a takeoff on the Tesla Gigafactory?
Well, they're doing the same darn thing.
They're doing the same thing.
But giga means bigger.
It sure does. And this is GM. This is not a small company doing this.
No, it's General Motors. We're not playing. We're playing with the big guys now.
Exactly. And, when Tesla started work on its Gigafactory, it was still relative.
It was novel.
It was novel. And
GM is planning to roll out a number of new battery electric cars, and
Yeah.
it actually is a joint venture with LG Chem,
yeah,
and it's going to produce 30 gigawatt hours of battery cells annually, which is enough for 500,000 cars.
yes. Clearly,
500,000 cars.
they're clearly planning on building a lot of cars.
Well, it's coming, guys.
I guess it is.
The electric car is coming, guys. There's no
Yeah.
way around it.
Yes.
We got a nice picture here of Kansas coming up.
Yep. Wind turbines in Kansas, as a matter of fact. And you know, this is a weird picture because those turbines are all lighted up, and they're against a sky that in places is just about jet black, but it has a rainbow in it.
Well, it could be a composite picture.
I kind of have a feeling that this is actually what it is. The sun was well behind, and you know, it's just my feeling.
By the way, that picture when I first took a look at it was quite dark.
Yeah.
And in Word, anyhow, the Word is an easy way to lighten them up.
Yes.
It probably is in most word processing programs, but I light the picture up and it's a lot easier to see.
Well, this article is from the Kansas City Star.
Yes, it is. And it says, for the first time, wind energy overtakes coal in Kansas. We're going to be talking about stuff like that a little later on.
Yeah, we are. Wind energy has overtaken coal in Kansas for the first time. The American Wind Energy Association reports that wind accounted for the largest share of energy production in Kansas and in Iowa in 2019. It is the first time that wind was the top source of electricity in any state. And I want to point out, this is wind. This is not renewable energy, which would
It's just wind.
It's just wind.
Well, there's a lot of wind in Kansas.
I was born in Kansas, and I tell people, you remember the Wizard of Oz?
Yes.
And that sequence at the beginning where it shows that woman riding her bicycle through Kansas and so forth, and it's all very great. That was right across the street from where I was born.
Oh, no kidding.
Well, I am kidding, but I know about Kansas because I was born there. Okay.
Well, there's a video here that's worth looking at.
Yes.
It says, see how wind turbines capture and convert wind energy to generate clean electricity. It's an interesting video.
Yes.
Well, there's some quick takeaways here. Kansas wind power increased to 41% of generation last year.
Yeah.
Coal fell to 33%.
Yeah.
And as it says, Kansas has an abundance of wind, and over 3,000 turbines to utilize it.
Yes, and they're going to have more.
Well, they could still add, from what the wind is generating in Kansas, 500 gigawatts of wind production. That would be 200,000 turbines.
Yes.
I don't think they're going to do that, but they got enough wind to do it.
They got enough wind. I don't think they're going to do that.
Let's look at Saturday, April 18th.
Yeah, let's do that.
We got a nice picture of a dragster. Wow.
Yeah. And
5,000 horsepower it is.
Yes, that's right. I did a little calculation on this. I'll tell you about it after we talk about the article.
Well, a tiny 1,340 horsepower electric motor is driving the Hyperloop. And there's 4 of those motors there.
Yep. Reading the specs on the HyperPower's electric motor is a dizzying experience. At 18 inches by what looks like less than 4 inches, each motor reportedly delivers 1 megawatt power, or 1,340 horsepower. HyperPower has developed the motor units so they can be ganged in a common engine shaft, and that car has got 4 of them, but it's 5,000 horsepower.
That's amazing.
Isn't it?
That's amazing.
Now, I'm accustomed to dealing. I used to work with various pieces of old electricity, and a half horsepower DC motor. I would not want to hold one in my lap. Those things were big.
Absolutely.
And this thing is not a whole lot bigger, if it is bigger. And it's not half a horsepower, it's 1,340 horsepower.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, but Tom,
Nice picture of the motor in this article, by the way.
yeah, I want you to consider something. This thing is 18 inches by what looks like less than 4.
That's about right.
If you
I think it's right behind the wheel in
Yeah.
this particular car, and I'm sure it does.
if you could gang 26 of these things together,
Yeah.
23 of them together, I'm sorry. If you could gang 23 of them together, you would have a set of motors that would be about 18 inches by something on the order of, say, 10 feet. 18 inches by 10 feet. Now, you couldn't gang them together on a single shaft because their shaft isn't designed to be strong enough for 23 of them to be ganged up. But if you did that twice, and you attached each of those to one of the screws of a Fletcher-class destroyer from the Second World War, that would power the
ship.
That is amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
Well, somebody's going to do that sometime soon.
They may be doing it already, for all I know. I mean, when I got my Prius, which was 2001, it had I think it was a 35 horsepower motor that was about the size of a grapefruit can. And
Okay.
it was, I mean, you couldn't see it. I just knew that it was buried in the engine system somehow. But
wow.
These new motors they've got are built using super magnets, and they're powerful.
Yes, they are.
Okay, you want to move on?
Well, there's the quick takeaway here.
Good.
The HyperPower, which is the name of the company,
Yeah.
is developing an electric dragster. That's, I think, this one.
That's what it is.
It's offering 0 to 320 miles per hour in 3.7 seconds.
Yeah, and when you're all done, it's hard to stop the car because the guy who was in it passed out.
The top speed is only about 380 miles an hour.
Oh my
The
God!
acceleration is going to blow your head off.
And here, you look at that thing and you say to yourself, "Where's the engine?"
Yeah, you would.
I mean, it almost looks like, I don't know. It looks like a joke, and it isn't.
And by the way, that's being done in Australia.
Yes, that particular company is in Australia. Yep.
It's not a California dragster.
That was from Clean Technica, in case I didn't say it before.
Well, you said it now.
I've said it now, and we've got another one coming up, also Clean Technica, and it's actually a reprint of an article that appeared in 2017, and we talked about it then, I believe.
I'll touch base on that. I got the name of it.
Yeah.
Well, 200,000 Americans a year die from air pollution. Well, that's kind of kept secret, isn't it?
Well, it's kept secret if you're talking to certain politicians in Washington, but this information's been around, and if you want to get the information from MIT did studies on this, and the American Lung Association did studies on it. There's a lot of studies on it. We lose about 300 people a year in Vermont, which is almost one person every day. And the reason I wanted to put this up again at the site, it did appear again in Clean Technica, but the reason I wanted to put it up at the blog again is because think about that 200,000.
What's going on?
And what's going on with this coronavirus epidemic? The number of people who are dying of air pollution is extremely high, and it's something that we should have dealt with long ago.
That's what this says. Air pollution leads to a higher likelihood of death from COVID-19.
It does that. It exacerbates COVID-19. So we're going to be hearing...
And the article has a list of 16 problems caused by air pollution.
Yeah.
And there's 16 links to it.
Yeah.
And there's also a link to the original article, which was called This Stealth Terrorist Killed 53,000 Americans last year.
Yes.
And it's worth reading. It's a good article.
Yes. Okay. We have a picture of an offshore wind farm.
That's what it looks like to me.
From
It's got to go hard to see those wind towers, though.
Yeah, it is. And every time
on the horizon.
Every time I see those, I think about being on the beach or something like that, and seeing a sailboat or seeing a ship in the distance or something. And I don't think these things, I've never seen offshore wind turbines. I don't think they would bother me in the slightest.
Wouldn't bother me any.
Yeah. Okay, this is from Renewed.
And what it says is COVID-19, UK wind farms could be switched off.
National Grid warned that it could ask UK power plants, including some wind farms, to switch off in order to avoid the network being overwhelmed with electricity as the COVID-19 pandemic hits demand. The UK network operators said there has been a 10% drop in power demand.
Well, that's true, and it could rise to as much as 20% in the summer if the impact of this coronavirus continues.
Right.
Now, this drop is mainly due to decrease in energy use by industry, not by people staying at home.
Right. But you know, there's something here that people should understand, and that is baseload power plants are designed to supply the base load, which is the least load that is expected on a power grid.
Well, they're not expected to be turned on and off.
Yeah, and when you get to a point where your power demand is dropping below the base load, that means the base load power plants have to shut off.
Yeah.
So
that's expensive.
It's expensive. You know, when I watch, because I do this every day, I watch. I look every day at the current status of nuclear power plants and so forth on an individual basis.
Which are baseload plants.
They are baseload plants, and a lot of times I'll see a plant start up, and it'll struggle for about 5 days when it's below full load, and then it'll go off again because of some quirk that happened, you know, a startup problem, and then it'll start over again, and sometimes it'll take 3 weeks for a nuclear power plant to get back to full load.
I didn't realize it took that long.
Oh, usually it takes at least like 5 days, but it takes a lot of time. Those are big, big plants. Imagine having a tea kettle with, you know, 10,000 gallons of water in it. It just takes a long time to heat it up.
It's a big kettle for sure.
Yes. Okay, you want to go on, Tom?
Yeah, we got an interesting one here.
Okay.
The world's energy order is changing, and China is set to reap the strategic benefits. And there's an image there of a solar farm in China, and it's big.
It's big. It doesn't look much like solar farms in Vermont, I can tell you that, because it follows the contours of the hills.
This is a good article. It's long, but it's interesting.
Yeah, this is, we've got up to Sunday, April 19th, by the way. And this article is from ABC Science Online. And I don't remember whether that's ABC in the United States or no, that's ABC in
Australian Broadcasting. I looked that one up.
I recently had an article that was ABC News, and it was American Broadcast Company News, and it looked identical to the ABC News that comes from Australia. But you know, I've decided it's probably nice to be careful of that. But what do you have for a title for this?
The world. I think I read it.
Oh, maybe you did.
The world. I'll read it again. The world's energy order is changing, and China is set to reap the strategic benefits.
You did read it, and thank you for reading it again. The production cap agreed on by OPEC Plus, the instability of the markets, the economic fall due to the coronavirus pandemic, and the ongoing technological changes are playing out in a power shift, and it looks like China is going to be the main beneficiary.
I mentioned OPEC Plus because it's confusing. Since the 1960s, a cartel of OPEC, which is a cartel of 14 oil-producing countries, has controlled a huge amount of the world's oil supply. OPEC has now expanded, forming a super cartel with 10 non-OPEC countries called OPEC Plus.
Yes.
Control roughly 55% of the world's supply.
Yes. And my understanding was the United States was represented in this.
They are. They're one of the 10 non-OPEC countries.
Yeah, and so is Russia, which is one of the really big players. Yeah. And we're going to be talking about the problems for oil, but
Well, this article mentions something that we're going to visit a couple of times, I think, before this one's over.
Yes.
This week, oil price descended to negative values.
Yes.
Okay, due to limited storage.
Which means that if you went to buy the oil they would have to pay you to take it away.
That's exactly what it means. Well, China is now the world's largest producer, exporter, and installer of solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, and electric vehicles, placing it at the forefront of the global transition.
And that's new technology, you know, and if we're going to insist on trying to promote coal and oil and natural gas, we have to remember that...
Lose.
Huh?
We're going to lose.
Yeah, because it's like backing buggy whips and horseshoes when the automobile is
Absolutely
moving in, you know. So it's not I think it's extremely important for the future of the United States to get involved in this in a big way.
They have to. We have to.
We have to.
China sees what's going on, and they're doing it.
What's that
Just
again?
twiddling our thumbs.
Yes. Well, I mean, we've got policy that's driven by people who imagine that they're going to have problems if renewable energy supplants them, which is probably true the way they do business. They just have a business plan.
Absolutely. Well, this one's from CNN. It says, designing an end to a toxic American obsession, which is the lawn.
Yeah, and this is a beautiful picture of greenery. I just titled it Greenery. It didn't have a title at CNN. It did have a thing saying credit Jennifer Roper, but it's kind of a pretty picture of the front of a house with
A garden.
With a garden that does not include grass.
Well, they mention that's kind of ridiculous when you come right down to it.
Yes, unless you happen to keep sheep or goats.
Well, this is a good article.
Yeah,
there's a lot of pictures in there of front gardens, and it's worth considering.
Yeah, lawns cover 2% of the entire United States. Maintaining them produces more greenhouse gases than they absorb. They are biodiversity deserts. Think about that for a minute. They're not places where a lot of things live. You know, the robin hops around and gathers worms, and the worms will live there. But from the point of view of a lot of biodiversity, they're just not good. And if you're going to use toxic chemicals to keep them under control, the worms don't. You got toxic worms.
You got toxic yourself.
Yeah. Biodiversity deserts that have contributed to vanishing insect populations, they require more irrigation than any agricultural crop grown in the country. And we've got alternatives. And that picture is actually a picture of an alternative to a lawn. So,
well, that's the article is full of pictures of front gardens.
Yes, it is. And imagine that picture with all of the greenery and all of the wood just cut out. So you've got a white building with a door and steps, and then have a lawn there. This is beautiful.
This is much more attractive.
I think so, yeah.
Well, in 2005, this is interesting. A NASA satellite study found that American residential lawns are nearly equal in size to the entire country of Greece.
Yes.
That's 50,000 square miles.
Yeah. I didn't include that in the synopsis because I figured that most people don't really know how big Greece is. It's hard for me, and I've got a good sense of the, you know, maps and things of that nature. It's hard for me to picture the area of Greece. I mean,
I bet it's as big, as close as the Atlantic seaboard from Maine to about Virginia.
Yeah, that's easier, except how wide is the seaboard? Do you happen to know, Tom?
No.
See, it's
well, it's the width of the states. It would extend to the end of Pennsylvania, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you want to go on?
Yeah, let's move on.
We've got an item here.
You mentioned one thing here that I thought I'd mention.
What's that?
Victory gardens.
Victory gardens.
In the time of World War II, virtually everybody had a small garden.
There's actually a town in New Jersey called Victory Garden.
Is there really?
Yeah. It was part of Dover, and the people all had gardens, and they decided they were going to have their own community, and they did.
Good. Good for them.
Okay, our next item comes from
NBC News.
NBC News, and it includes a picture of a woman who has a very big smile. Even a small copy of this picture shows her big smile. In a canoe that she has made, and I want to tell you that every time I see this picture, I think about the Big Rock Candy Mountain.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a line in there about there's a lake of stew and of whiskey too, and you can paddle all around them in a big canoe.
I don't know that song, but so.
Okay.
No, there's a fungus among us. No. Is fungus the answer to climate change? Student who grew a mushroom canoe says yes.
She grew that canoe.
Yeah.
Catch a glimpse of Katie Ayers paddling her canoe on a Nebraska lake. I didn't know there were any lakes in Nebraska.
There's one.
There's one. I think there's more than one. On a Nebraska lake this summer, and you might do a double take. Her 8-foot canoe seems much like any other until you look closely, and then you see it's different. It's made out of mushrooms.
A little bit of an explanation here.
Yes.
Mycelium, the dense fibrous roots of the mushroom that typically live beneath the soil, is buoyant and waterproof. So she decided to try using it to create a boat, actually to grow it.
Yes.
So she built a wooden skeleton and sandwiched it with mushroom spawn and let nature take its place. The last step in the process was to let the 100-pound boat dry in the Nebraska sun.
Yes.
Now the boat is still alive, which means it grows mushrooms each time it gets wet.
Oh, yeah. I've gotten that. And I don't know what kind, does it say there what kind of mushrooms she used?
Well, if it did, I didn't record it. So
she might have used oyster mushrooms because they grow very aggressively. And if she did, then after she goes out and paddles around, she can take that canoe, and when the mushrooms grow out of it, she can clip them off and eat them for lunch.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. We are up to Monday, April 20th, and we have a picture of cable on a cable-laying ship.
That's interesting.
That ship, by the way, is named the Safety First.
Oh, is it? You got the name of that ship, huh?
No, I'm just reading the sign, and it looks like it could have been put in a place where the name of the ship would be. That kind of cable, by the way, is not something that you can tie into a bow easily.
I don't think so. I used to work for a company that made submarine cables.
Yes.
Simplex Wire and Cable, it was called, and they're not part of the consortium they mentioned here.
Yeah.
Well, Tennessee, which is the name of a company, launches a 2-gigawatt cable project.
Tenet contracted with an international group of cable suppliers to develop a new 2-gigawatt submarine cable, and I want to tell you that 2-gigawatt connection for offshore wind projects planned off the Dutch and German coasts. The project will deploy a 525 kilovolt high voltage distributed current extruded submarine cable system.
Well, first of all, it's not distributed current, it's direct current. This probably was written in Dutch and translated to English.
Well, very good point, Tom. I didn't understand that.
And it is an extruded submarine cable because virtually all of the cables are now extruded.
Yeah.
But in any case, Tenet is a system operator in the Netherlands and in a large part of Germany. It's owned by the Dutch government. And this particular system that they're building will be ready for deployment in early 2022.
Which is not that far off.
Not very far off.
Yeah.
Right now, well, not right now, but eventually, 40% of the Netherlands' electricity will come from offshore wind farms by 2030.
Okay.
So they're planning ahead.
Yeah, that item came from Renews, by the way. Our next item has a picture of an oil rig, and it's
going under a bridge.
BBC. Tom, can you tell where that oil rig is in the picture?
No, I can't.
Well, you see on the right side of the screen there a thing that looks a little bit like a nuclear power plant with.
It looks like a mosque.
It actually is the mosque. Those are minarets.
It is a mosque, huh?
It is. And I looked at that and I said, that looks an awful lot like the Cathedral of Hagia Sophia, which was in Constantinople, and it was taken over by the Turks, who turned it into a mosque. And now it's a museum. That's Hagia Sophia, which was built, I don't remember the year, but it was built like 1,500 years ago.
I was going to say about 800 AD or something.
Yeah, something like that. Very famous building, very interesting architecture. So, let's see. Did you read the, I don't think, no, you didn't read it.
I haven't read it yet. U.S. oil prices drop to a 21-year low as demand dries up.
You know, we're going to go further with this. The price,
We'll hit this one again.
what?
We're going to hit something very much like
We
this.
are, yes. The price of a barrel of West Texas Intermediate dropped 14% to $15.65 in Asian trading, its lowest level since 1999. Earlier this month, OPEC and its allies agreed to a record deal to reduce global output by 10%, but some analysts said the cut was not big enough to make a difference. And my recollection, Tom, is that you and I talked about whether it was big enough to make a difference, and we agreed it was not.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Well, there's a quick takeaway here,
Yeah.
and we're going to talk about this again. Oil producers are paying buyers to take the commodity off their hands over fears that storage capacity could run out, which is happening.
We're going to get into that. We will.
Oil has all but dried up due to lockdowns across the world, which has forced the price of oil into negative territory,
Yeah.
as low as minus $37.63 a barrel. And we'll touch base on this again.
That minus 37.63, by the way, was not the lowest level it went to. It was the lowest level that it finished the day at. It actually went down to minus 40.
Wow.
Fred. Do you want to go on, or do you want to talk?
Let's move on. We're going to be touching base with that on another, I think, 2 more articles.
Yeah, we have a picture of a big solar array in Mexico. This is from iNews.
iNews, yes, it is. Green energy investment could turbocharge economic growth. Could is the emphasis there.
Yes. A report from the International Renewable Energy Agency says investment in renewable energy could turbocharge economic growth in the aftermath of COVID-19, leaving populations richer, healthier, and safe from future climate risks. And
what it says here is rapid scale-up of low-carbon infrastructure could revive the global economy after the pandemic.
yes,
Higher renewables investment promise more jobs, higher economic growth, cleaner living conditions, and significantly improved welfare.
yes,
Move to green energy could deliver a $98 trillion boost to the global GDP by mid-century.
and employ tens of millions of people.
Absolutely. It's a win-win situation.
Far more people than are employed by fossil fuels right now. But we'll have to see what happens.
Well, we got a picture coming up, and guess what? It's pump jacks.
It's pump jacks that look like painted ladies. You know the painted ladies?
There's a good question here. How can the oil price be negative?
Yeah. This is from Tuesday, April 21st, and this is an item from what is called Share Cafe. Oil is the world's most heavily traded physical commodity, but most of the trades are in the futures market, with the oil not actually changing hands until the contract matures. When that happens, the oil has to be stored someplace. In the United States, that usually means it goes into storage tanks in Cushing, Oklahoma, but the tanks are all full.
Well, it's saying here in the article, from the article, all available U.S. storage is now either taken or spoken for.
Right.
It includes the filling of oil tankers and sitting them off the coast going nowhere.
And
here's the big kicker. Oil costs money to store.
yes, it does.
So what is the cost of storage when there is no storage capacity left?
Well, all of a sudden, the cost of storage goes to whatever the person who owns it demands, doesn't it?
On that basis, anyone stuck with a futures contract has no choice but to sell at any price. Any price implies you pay just to get the stuff off your hands.
Yeah, and I want to explain here how the futures market works.
Okay, good.
You can buy potatoes today for delivery in November. If you're a farmer who's growing soybeans, you can sell part of your crop that's going to be coming out next fall now. And what happens with that kind of sale is you go into what's called a futures. It's a sale of something that doesn't yet exist but will exist, and when it does, it'll get delivered at a specific date.
On that date, and this is the price you will pay for it.
That's right.
On that date.
I remember about 45 years ago hearing a woman telling me about a person she knew who was playing the market. That is to say, he was gambling on futures because
They do that.
they do that. Those contracts can be bought and sold.
Well, let me read quickly what I got about futures.
Okay,
to
go ahead.
add to you what we know.
Go ahead.
Futures contracts are standardized agreements that typically trade on an exchange. That's like a stock exchange.
Right.
They are financial contracts obligating a buyer to purchase an asset and a seller to sell that asset at a predetermined future date and price, regardless of today's price.
Right.
Well, the price of that asset on that future date is different from the value in the contract. The buyer and seller make a profit or a loss, respectively.
Right.
The traders pay only a fraction of value in the contract up front, which is called the margin, and they deposit that with a broker.
Right.
So the futures market can be used by many different kinds of financial players, including investors and speculators, as well as companies that actually want to take physical delivery of that commodity or supply it.
Yeah.
So it's an important part of the way we do business.
So if you grew potatoes in Maine and you wanted to get a little bit of money right now, you could sell a future on your crop for the fall to somebody who
Exactly.
needs to buy potatoes in September, October, November, and the person who's buying them is going to be buying a huge quantity in the one market. The woman I was mentioning, her friend was speculating in the futures market, and he bought a potato future. And the price of potatoes went down, and
So he lost money.
he was losing money. He couldn't bring himself to sell the future. And one day somebody called him up and said, "So where do you want the potatoes?" And he very unwisely said, "I don't want them at all." But what he was doing was he was talking to a trucker who happened to be down the block. He wound up having a 14-foot high pile of potatoes on his front yard.
That's funny. That can happen.
It can happen.
That
Now,
can
what
happen.
happened here is that people were buying and selling oil futures, and all of a sudden they realized they've got to put that oil someplace, or the person they sell the future to has got to put the oil someplace. So the speculators all of a sudden were not willing to buy futures that were for deliveries in May. So what happened?
Coming right up, we got a picture that shows exactly that.
Let's go to that. We've got a picture of the oil price crash. This is the oil futures crash. It comes from CNBC, and it goes with an article from CNBC. And
Which I will read.
I want to point out that the zero line here is not the bottom, it's the middle of the screen. And that thing the line was going up and down kind of as people started to realize that there was going to be a problem for May deliveries. And then all of a sudden, May contract, they said, we can't hold this. What are you going to do? Because an oil future is 1,000 barrels.
Yep.
That's 42,000 gallons. That is over 8 of those big tank trucks you see on the road. And if you buy a future, you're going to take delivery on that, or you're going to find some place to put it. And if you don't have it, you're in trouble. Because
they've been going on for a long time, so I'm sure they've got a nifty enforcement mechanism.
Yeah, they've got a nifty enforcement mechanism, and it costs a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You're far better off selling the future at negative 37.63 than holding the thing and taking delivery, because that tractor truck loads of oil are not going to fit on your front lawn.
I don't think there's enough room.
Probably not.
Well, let's hit the article here.
Okay, this is from CNBC.
It says anyone who thinks oil has hit a floor, is playing with fire. Yes, prices can go lower.
Yeah, and
There's
oil
some nice videos there that are worth watching, about 3.5 minutes each.
An oil futures contract in the U.S. made a historic plunge, with West Texas Intermediate crude for May delivery falling below zero for the first time to settle at a negative 37.63 a barrel. Oil demand crashed due to the pandemic and storage facilities being full. And Tom, this is where I want to bring up Harvey's third law.
Okay.
You and I have been talking about an upcoming oil crash for years.
Yeah.
Okay, I think probably 3 years. I've even had people as much as a year ago starting to make fun of me and say, George, when's the crash coming? And I have just said, well, it hasn't come yet, but it's going to come for sure. Now we're seeing that crash.
This is that crash.
How did you and I know that this was going to happen? Well, we didn't know that the pandemic was coming, but
What goes up must come down.
Yeah, the pandemic was that extremely unlikely thing.
Yeah,
that was going to happen. And it didn't have to be a pandemic. It could have been a war. It could have been a discovery of some scientific type. It could have been any of a variety of different things. It just happened to be a pandemic. And all of a sudden, in the face of this huge infrastructure, OPEC Plus has to produce oil, which is producing oil like mad, the demand for it evaporates, and there's no place to put it.
And they got all this infrastructure in place that's working, and they're reluctant to shut it off.
Yes. And in some cases,
this is a lose-lose situation
for them.
For them.
And I had never known it, but apparently, if an oil well is under production and stopped, that act of stopping it can damage the oil well. I had never known that, and I don't know.
Never heard that.
I have read that in a number of different places. I don't know for a fact that it's true, but it is something that I've read, and oil companies are extremely reluctant to shut their supply down, their pumps down. But the thing is, we know that companies are going to go bankrupt. One of them already has.
I was just going to say that's happening already.
It's already happening. We know that many.
Didn't our friend Mr. Murray get hit?
He's coal.
Free energy.
He's coal.
He's coal, yeah.
But excuse me, the thing that I saw an article today in which the people who wrote the article were saying, okay, so the price is down, it's gone below zero. What's it going to be next year? We don't know.
We don't know.
What could happen is all of a sudden somebody comes up with a very effective a vaccine for the coronavirus. Demand suddenly returns. People could suddenly go back to work, and all of that oil could be taken up. All the oil in reserve could be taken up in a situation where oil companies have been going broke, and so the supply declines. So all of a sudden, there's a huge increase in price next year. We don't know. That could happen.
Yeah, it could. Stranger things have happened, I'm sure.
But if it does, I'm going to be expecting another crash afterwards, because the underlying problem that made the industry weak is not going to be strengthened.
Well, we got a nice picture coming up of a wind farm.
Yes, things are.
I don't know how they got that picture. It must be a composite.
No, it's not. That's not a composite. That picture is what do they call an exposure that goes on and on and on?
Time exposure?
Time exposure taken looking at the North Pole.
Okay, it's looking out from the north. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And
the only place they could take a picture like that was the North Pole or the South Pole.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was little, I was very into astronomy. I am still to a little bit, but I saw a lot of pictures like that when I was a kid. Anyway.
Now it makes sense, because I was wondering about that.
Yep. Okay, this is from mining.com.
Yes, it is. Renewables overtake coal-fired power production for the first time. This time they're talking about the world.
They're talking about the world. The International Energy Agency report on key electric power trends in the world's developed economies released last week shows the renewable energy overtake coal as a source of electricity generation for the first time. In 2019, coal use was 13.4% lower than in 2018.
Well, in 2019, non-combustible renewable production accounted for just under 26% of the total electricity mix.
Yeah.
Coal made up just over 22%.
Right.
Natural gas right now is leading at 29%, and it remains, as it says, the leading source of electricity in the 35 countries that this report covers.
Yes. Although our last article, which is the third one coming, will address the position of
We're going to hit it again.
It's going to hit that thing about natural gas, yeah.
Yep. Well, we got a picture coming up, and it's the strategic petroleum reserve sites. I didn't realize they were all down by the Gulf of Mexico.
Well, that's where a lot of the refineries.
Refineries are there, yep.
This is
It's a good but a long article.
Yes.
From Clean Technical.
Yep.
And Clean Technica.
Yeah.
It says speculation, hopes, and tweets, and wishful thinking. Negative prices explained.
Yes, and that's what this is about. It's explaining the negative prices. This is from Wednesday, April 22nd, by the way. On April 20th, the price of a barrel of West Texas Intermediate fell below negative $40 a barrel briefly, sending shockwaves through the industry and leading to a 600-point drop on Wall Street. How can a barrel of oil be worth less than zero? Well, here is an explanation.
A quick explanation.
Yes.
If there is an oversupply of a product, it can be warehoused until prices stabilize. However, thanks to the global pandemic, storage facilities for oil are rapidly filling up. There is literally no place to store any more of it. You have to pay to put the oil somewhere.
Yes.
That's the explanation.
That's the explanation. And, you know, this was a weak industry to begin with. And Tom, you and I have been talking about that, and all of a sudden COVID-19 threw a monkey wrench into the works. And
pretty big monkey wrench, let me tell you.
Absolutely. And this is, I don't know, this is, it's hard for me to, I know that the coal industry, the oil industry as it existed 6 months ago is not going to recover. Big companies in that industry might recover. That's a different issue.
The little guys are going to get hit hardest.
The little guys were already in desperate trouble.
Yep.
All of a sudden, they've got this come along. No, this is industry changing. Okay.
An interesting picture here of a ship.
Yep.
And the ship is loaded with wind turbine stuff.
Yep.
Turbines, well, we don't see the turbines, but we see the foundations and the pipes.
That's what the article is about.
And that's exactly what the article's about. It's heading for the U.S., where they're going to be assembled in Virginia.
Okay, this is from Renews. Dominion Energy and Ørsted are to begin construction shortly at the two-turbine coastal Virginia offshore wind demo project, as key components are now on their journey from Europe. 2 EEW fabricated monopile foundations will be the first ever installed in U.S. waters. We don't have much time left, Tom. If you don't mind, I'd like to just go straight to the next article.
Well, here we go.
Okay.
Desert turbines. U.S. renewable energy additions completely overwhelm those by natural gas in the first months of 2020.
Okay, this is from Solar Power World, and the picture is wind turbines in a desert. A Sunday campaign review of FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission data, has found that solar, wind, and hydropower provided 85.7% of new U.S. electric generating capacity during the first 2 months of 2020, overwhelming additions of natural gas. This is something that we saw coming.
Well, the mix of low renewables will add over 50 gigawatts of new generating capacity to the nation's total by February of 23, while that of natural gas, coal, oil, and nuclear power combined will actually decrease by almost 2 gigawatts.
That tells you something. Now, Tom, I think we're at the
last one.
What?
I think this is the last one.
It is, but we don't have any time left. So I think we're going to have
all right, didn't we?
We're going to have to say goodbye and wish people a healthy and happy week, and hope that they come back. Hope you all come back.
And stay out of the hot sun.
Stay out of the hot sun and stay out of trouble. Have a good week. Bye-bye.
Adios.